When my sister Vanessa packed her bags for New York at 22, she left behind a room still full of trophies and a mother who cried into dish towels for a week straight. I stayed. I stayed because Dad's knees were getting worse and he wasn't supposed to drive anymore. Because Mom never quite figured out how to refill his prescriptions on time. Because the dog still needed walking and the lawn still needed mowing. And someone had to help pay the utilities when Dad's hours were cut. I had just graduated community college with a degree in early childhood education. I had dreams, real ones, about teaching, maybe traveling someday, maybe getting my master's in a big city. But someone had to stay. So I did. Vanessa always had the shine. She was the straight-A student, the debate captain, the one everyone said was going places. And she did. MBA from Columbia, internship at a tech startup that turned into a six-figure job by the time she was 26. While I was working 2 part-time jobs, married a mechanic named Tyler who later cheated on me and moved into a tiny duplex with 2 toddlers and an eviction notice taped to the window. People called her ambitious. They called me resilient. Guess which one gets you more respect at family dinners? Vanessa came home twice a year, Christmas and Thanksgiving. She always brought something gluten-free and talked about company acquisitions like she was trying to impress shareholders. I didn't mind. I was happy for her. I held no bitterness. Not really. But I noticed the way Mom beamed when Vanessa walked in the room, how Dad sat up straighter when she asked about his golf game, how everyone went silent when she talked and barely nodded when I mentioned that Liam finally read a full sentence or that Grace learned how to tie her shoes. I was the one who cleaned up when they spilled juice, who packed their lunches, who stayed up all night with them through ear infections and stomach bugs, but I was also the one who didn't make it out. It wasn't until Vanessa started dating a guy named Mark that I became useful again. She'd fly in for weekends to visit, but she didn't want to bring the twins she had with her first husband. She'd say it was too disruptive or not appropriate for a work brunch or a client dinner. So guess who watched them? Me. In my already cramped apartment, with my kids crawling over me, I added hers. Changing diapers, heating up bottles, brushing tangled curls, teaching them not to bite. They called me Aunt Ray. And when they cried for her at night, I'd lie and say she'd call in the morning. That she missed them. That she loved them. Even when I didn't believe it. When she finally got married again, to Mark, the orthopedic surgeon with a Tesla and a timeshare in Aspen, everyone celebrated. My parents were over the moon. Dad gave a speech about 2 exceptional people finding each other. Mom called it a new chapter for our family. I smiled, I clapped. I watched from the side, clutching Liam and Grace's hands, while people toasted a future that didn't have a single seat for me. No one mentioned how I'd helped Vanessa survive the hard years, how I'd raised her kids when she was too busy building an empire, how I gave up every extra weekend and vacation for 6 years. I wasn't expecting an award, but I thought maybe they'd at least remember. I once asked Mom if she thought I made a mistake by staying. She frowned. Don't be ridiculous. Not everyone's meant to chase big dreams. Some people build strong roots. Roots. It sounded noble, but that's what people say when they want you to stay planted in place while everyone else gets to fly. And for a long time I accepted that. I smiled, I adjusted, I made casseroles and held babies and bit my tongue when they said, well, Vanessa just doesn't have time for that kind of thing. Until one day she invited me to her wedding and told me my children weren't welcome. When Vanessa's wedding invitation arrived in the mail, it was thick, heavy, cream-colored cardstock with rose gold embossed lettering and a satin ribbon tied around the envelope like a promise I should feel grateful to receive. It was beautiful, formal, and cold. The inside read, "You are cordially invited to celebrate the union of Vanessa Claire Dawson and Dr. Mark Elias Whitmore." And underneath that, in the smallest font possible, "This is an adults-only ceremony and reception." I blinked, looked again, turned the envelope over. No names for Grace, no mention of Liam, just Rachel Dawson. I thought it was a mistake. I texted her the next morning. Me, "Hey, got the invite, it's beautiful. Just confirming, no kids? Or did the printer mess up?" She responded within 5 minutes. No emojis, no warmth. "Vanessa, hi. No, it's adults only. I hope that's okay. It's just gonna be very formal and not really kid-friendly." Not really kid-friendly. Like a museum or a wine tasting. Not like a wedding, something that, the last time I checked, was supposed to involve family. I stared at my phone, unsure what to say. 1,000 memories flashed through my head like someone flipping through a photo album on fire. The sleepless nights, the early mornings, the extra lunch I packed for her twins every time she forgot. They were staying another day. The diapers I changed, the tears I wiped, the lullabies I hummed for children who called me safe. And now, my own children weren't welcome. Later that day, I called Mom. "Did you know Vanessa isn't allowing kids at the wedding?" She hesitated. That was all I needed to hear. "It's her special day, sweetie. She wants it elegant, you know? Adults can let loose, drink, relax." I could hear the clink of a spoon in a teacup. She was probably sitting in the kitchen, same as always, defending the child who had never made a sacrifice that didn't come with a spotlight. "You understand, right?" she added, the way people do when they expect you to say yes even if you don't. I didn't answer, because what I wanted to say was, "You all spent years telling me family is everything. I gave everything, and now you want me to pretend my children don't exist for a few hours so Vanessa can feel like a queen in a castle built on everyone else's back?" But I didn't. I just hung up. 2 days later, Vanessa called. "Rachel, I know you're upset, but this wedding is going to be very curated. Think champagne tower, live string quartet, black tie. It's not the place for toddlers or spilled juice boxes." I sat in silence, the weight of her words pressing on my chest like a hand trying to pin me down. "You mean it's not the place for my children?" I said. She sighed. "Don't make this about you." There it was. The line. The unspoken rule. Don't make this about you. Because everything about Vanessa's life was a performance, and we were just the stagehands. I swallowed hard. "Do you remember when I took in Ava and Jackson for 2 weeks because you had that product launch in LA and Mark was traveling?" Of course I do. Did I ever complain? Did I ever say it wasn't toddler-friendly in my tiny living room while Liam had strep throat? She didn't answer. "You could have made space for us, Vanessa. You chose not to." "It's one day," she said. "Can't you just come and enjoy it?" I laughed, bitter and tired. "You've been enjoying your life for years, Vanessa. You just never noticed who was keeping it upright while you were sipping your sparkling rosé." I hung up, and this time, I didn't wait for her to call back. The week before the wedding, an updated seating chart was emailed to me. Table 14, near the restrooms, next to coworkers I'd never met. Behind the bar, out of sight. I stared at it for a while, and then I RSVP'd no, not out of anger, out of clarity, because I finally saw it for what it was. Not a misunderstanding, not an oversight, a choice, a declaration. Vanessa wasn't ashamed of me, she was ashamed of the part of herself I reminded her of, the grounded one, the sacrificial one, the version that never got to sparkle. So she cut me out, and I let her. I shouldn't have gone. Everything in me told me not to. But some foolish, wounded part of me thought maybe, just maybe, being there would remind them I was still part of the family. That despite the exclusion, the insults disguised as logistics, the silent erasure of my children, I could still show up. Smile. Prove that I was unshakable. I wore the nicest dress I owned. A navy wrap with a high neckline and sleeves that covered the fading bruises of years spent holding everyone else's burdens. I curled my hair, wore mascara, lipstick. Walked into the hotel ballroom like a guest and not a ghost. The room sparkled with gold chairs, white roses, and flickering votives in crystal holders. A live violinist played something from Vivaldi. A slideshow of Vanessa and Mark played on loop near the head table. Childhood photos, engagement shots, travel selfies in Santorini. There were maybe 80 people there. I knew 10 of them. And not one looked surprised to see me. Just mildly inconvenienced. Vanessa didn't greet me. She was across the room in a champagne-colored dress, laughing too loudly with a group of friends from the city. Mark stood beside her, tall and polished, like he'd been chiseled out of a medical journal. I waited. I thought maybe she'd see me. Smile, wave, nod. She didn't. So I found my name on a place card, table 8, and sat between 2 coworkers of Mark's I'd never met. One of them leaned over and asked, "So how do you know the couple?" I smiled. "I helped raise her children." He blinked. I didn't elaborate. Dinner was dry chicken, undercooked asparagus, and silence. Everyone at my table was either on their phone or too busy complimenting each other's careers to notice I existed. At one point, someone made a joke about stay-at-home moms and how cushy they have it, and I laughed under my breath. Not because it was funny, because I'd forgotten how invisible exhaustion becomes when no one has ever carried it but you. After dessert, Dad took the mic. He thanked everyone for coming, gave a generic speech about how proud we are of Vanessa and what a journey it's been. Not a single mention of her children. Not a single nod to the people who kept those kids clothed and fed when she flew to Berlin for a tech conference. Then Mom stood up. In a voice thick with pride, she said, "Vanessa has always been our shining star. We knew, even as a little girl, that she was meant for more. And now, watching her build this life, this future, we couldn't be more proud." The room clapped. I didn't. Because I felt like I was clapping for my own erasure. Afterward, in the hallway outside the ballroom, I ran into Ava and Jackson, Vanessa's twins. They were in matching pajamas, barefoot, eating cookies from a napkin. "Ray Ray!" they shouted, running into my arms. I crouched down and hugged them both, breathing in the smell of sugar and lavender shampoo. "Why aren't you inside?" I asked. Ava pouted. "Mommy said we were too loud." I bit my tongue. Jackson pulled at my hand. "You coming to the wedding tomorrow?" I didn't answer. Because how do you tell a child you're not allowed to see them celebrate their own mother? I kissed them both on the head, told them to be good. Watched as their nanny ushered them back to the hotel suite. And then I sat down on a bench in the hallway and cried. For the first time in a long, long time. Not quietly, not politely, but fully. I cried for every missed opportunity, every bedtime story, every school pickup, every night I spent reminding those kids they were loved by a mother who was never around, and a family who never saw me as more than background noise. That night, I didn't go home. I checked out of the hotel, drove to a friend's cabin 2 towns over, and turned off my phone for 3 days. I didn't go to the wedding, didn't send a gift, didn't post a polite comment under her Instagram carousel of best day ever. I chose silence, but not the kind I was raised to perform. This one was mine, earned, owned, sacred. And in that quiet, something inside me shifted. Not broken, freed. I expected fallout, angry texts, voicemails, maybe even in a guilt-ridden call from Mom asking why I ruined Vanessa's big day by not showing up. But for 3 days, nothing. Just silence, which told me everything. I didn't matter enough to chase. When I finally turned my phone back on, there were only 2 messages. From Mom, "I hope you're done being dramatic, you embarrassed all of us." From Vanessa, "You made your choice. Don't expect me to explain it to the kids." And that was it. Not "Are you okay?" Not "Let's talk," not even "We missed you." Just blame and abandonment, disguised as punishment. But for once, I didn't internalize it. Because this time, I wasn't wrong. This time, I hadn't yelled or lashed out or even tried to make anyone see things my way. I had simply stepped away. And in doing so, revealed just how little was holding that bridge up in the first place. The next week, I wrote a letter. Not to them, to myself. I wrote down every moment I had spent carrying this family. The first time I skipped a college interview because Dad was hospitalized. The job offer I turned down because Mom needed someone to drive her to her PT appointments. The birthdays I organized for Ava and Jackson when Vanessa forgot. The nights I spent budgeting meals so that 4 kids could eat, even if I couldn't. Then I wrote the things they said when I finally asked for space. "You're overreacting. Don't make everything about you. She's your sister. Support her. You've always been too sensitive." I read it back, and I cried again. But this time, not from hurt, from validation. Because I finally saw that I had never been asking for applause, just acknowledgement. And when even that was too much, they called it betrayal. I didn't tell them I was cutting them off. There was no dramatic announcement, no slammed door, just the quiet act of unsubscribing from a role I never auditioned for. I stopped checking their social media, stopped responding to group texts that felt more like PR campaigns than conversations, stopped pretending that one more sacrifice would earn me a seat at a table I helped build, but was never welcome at. Instead, I started saying yes to myself, yes to therapy, yes to rest, yes to weekends where my only job was being a mom to Liam and Grace, not a stand-in for someone else's failures. One morning, Grace asked, "Why didn't we go to Auntie Vanessa's wedding?" I paused, my coffee cooling in my hand. She was 7, old enough to notice, too young for the ugly truth. So I said, because sometimes people want to celebrate without thinking about who helped them get there. She nodded slowly, like she understood more than she should. Then she said something I'll never forget. Well, I wouldn't want to go if you couldn't be there too. And in that moment, I knew. I was raising someone who wouldn't need to hurt others to feel special, who wouldn't confuse silence with loyalty, who would know the difference between being invited and being valued. Vanessa didn't reach out again. Neither did Mom. Dad sent a birthday card for Liam that year. No note, just a $20 bill and a cartoon dinosaur. I never replied, and somehow, the world didn't end. My kids still laughed at silly cartoons, still spilled cereal on the rug, still danced in the kitchen in their pajamas while I made pancakes, and for the first time in years, I danced with them. Because I wasn't waiting anymore, not for validation, not for apologies, not even for justice, just joy. Quiet, earned, unshared joy. People love to say don't burn bridges, but they never ask what condition the bridge was in to begin with. They never ask how many times you crossed it with bleeding feet while the other side watched in silence. I didn't burn the bridge. I walked off it. And I finally looked back and saw it was already ash. A few months after the wedding, I finally donated the dress I'd worn to the rehearsal dinner. It hung in the back of my closet like a ghost, still smelling faintly of hotel soap and tears I pretended weren't mine. I folded it gently, placed it in a brown paper bag, and dropped it at the donation bin down the street. It felt like exhaling something I'd been holding in for too long, not just the fabric, the memory, the performance, the need. Vanessa's social media became quieter after the wedding. No more high-gloss couple photos. No more motivational captions about balance and having it all. I didn't check often, but sometimes curiosity won. 6 months after the ceremony, she announced she was pregnant again. In the photo, she stood barefoot in her kitchen, holding a sonogram next to a tiny onesie that said, "Baby number 3 loading." Thousands of likes. Hundreds of comments. All the usual, "You're glowing. You'll be the best mom, so happy for your beautiful family." I read them all without blinking. Not one mention of the 2 kids she already had. The ones I tucked into bed more times than she ever did. It hurt, but less than I expected. Because pain, when seen clearly, becomes information. And I had learned more than enough. That spring, I started something new. I launched a small local service called Story Nest, a weekend storytelling and literacy program for single moms and their children. Free books, reading circles, hot cocoa on rainy Saturdays. It started with 5 families. Now we're at 37. I've never felt more purposeful. I never got a seat at Vanessa's table. So I built my own. And it is full of mess and magic and loud laughter and kids who spill juice and women who cry when they realize they're not alone. No one wears tuxedos, but everyone belongs. One Saturday, Ava and Jackson showed up. I was stacking plastic cups when I heard Ava's voice. "Ray Ray?" I turned. There they were, older, taller, quieter. Their nanny had heard about the program through a friend. She brought them without knowing I ran it. I froze, then smiled. "Hi, sweethearts," they ran over. Hugged me like time hadn't passed at all. We didn't talk about their mom. We read Where the Wild Things Are on the rug, and Jackson insisted on doing the monster voices. Ava braided Grace's hair while Liam showed them how to marshmallows on cocoa without sinking them. It was the best hour of my year. And when they left, Ava whispered, "I missed you." I didn't cry, but I did sit in my car afterward and let the silence hold me like a truth I no longer feared. Vanessa never reached out. I don't know if she ever will, but if she does, she won't find the girl who waited for approval. She'll find the woman who built something better. Not perfect, but real. A life where I'm not a background character in someone else's success story. A life where my children know they are enough, even when others try to shrink them. A life where I show up for myself with the same ferocity I once reserved for people who barely noticed. The other day, Liam asked me, "Mom, why don't we go to family parties anymore?" I knelt down and said, "Because sometimes love comes with rules that hurt more than they help, and we get to choose which love we keep." He nodded like that made perfect sense. Maybe it did. Maybe it's enough. Because I may not have been invited to their table. But the one I've built, it's wide open. It's loud and messy and joyful, and it has room for every piece of me, especially the parts they never wanted. And in this life, I don't wait to be chosen. I choose myself. Every single time. It's funny what you begin to notice when you stop begging for space. The air feels lighter. Conversations no longer come with landmines hidden under compliments. And suddenly your home, small as it may be, starts to feel like a kingdom. Not because it's grand, but because you finally reign in it. I used to think I needed my family to validate me. To say, we see what you did. We're proud of you. We were wrong. But waiting for people who never learned how to love beyond control is like waiting for spring in a desert that forgot how to bloom. And I don't wait anymore. I water my own garden. Some bridges are never rebuilt. And that's okay. I don't hate them. I don't wish harm. But I've stopped calling their silence grace. And I've stopped labeling my boundaries as cruelty. I see now, walking away wasn't betrayal. It was recovery. From years of emotional shrinkage. From being the strong one who had to smile through neglect. From loving people who only knew how to take from the softest parts of me. Vanessa's kids still visit sometimes. Not often, but enough. They ask questions their mother won't answer, and I never fill those gaps with bitterness. I fill them with storybooks, board games, honest words like, sometimes grown-ups make choices that don't feel fair, but that doesn't mean you're unlovable. Because I want them to grow up knowing something I didn't, that your worth is not a negotiation. That love isn't love if you have to disappear to keep it. And my own children, they're thriving. Grace wants to be a writer. Liam is learning to bake scones and calls himself Chef L. They laugh loud, ask deep questions, hug often, and they know, deep in their bones, that they are enough, just as they are. That, more than anything, is my legacy. Not sacrifice, not silence, but clarity. And courage. One day, if they ever ask me what happened with my family, I'll tell them the truth. That I was written out of a story I helped build, so I picked up the pen and wrote myself back in, on my own terms, with love, with fire, and with a heart that no longer apologizes for beating loudly in rooms that tried to mute it.